The Hebrew alphabet, known variously by scholars as the Jewish script, square script, block script, is used in the writing of the Hebrew language, as well as other Jewish languages, most notably Yiddish, Ladino, and Judeo-Arabic. There have been two script forms in use. The original Old Hebrew script is known as the paleo-Hebrew script, while the present square form of the Hebrew alphabet is a stylized form of the Assyrian script. Various styles of representation of the letters exist. There is also a cursive Hebrew script, which has also varied over time and place. The Hebrew alphabet is 22 letters, of which 5 have different forms when used at the end of a word. Hebrew is written from right to left. Originally, the alphabet was an abjad consisting only of consonants. Like other abjads, such as the Arabic alphabet, means were later devised to indicate vowels by separate vowel points, known in Hebrew as niqqud. In rabbinic Hebrew, the letters unregistered trademark are also used as matres lectionis to represent vowels. When used to write Yiddish, the writing system is a true alphabet. In modern usage of the alphabet, as in the case of Yiddish and to some extent modern Israeli Hebrew, vowels may be indicated. Today, the trend is toward full spelling with these letters acting as true vowels. History. According to contemporary scholars, the original Hebrew script developed during the late 2nd and 1st millennia BCE alongside others used in the region. It is closely related to the Phoenician script, which was also an abjad, and which itself probably gave rise to the use of alphabetic writing in Greece. A distinct Hebrew variant, called the paleo-Hebrew alphabet, emerged by the 10th century BCE, an example of which is represented in the Gezer calendar. The paleo-Hebrew alphabet was commonly used in the ancient Israelite kingdoms of Israel and Judah, as well as by the Samaritans. Following the exile of the Kingdom of Judah in the 6th century BCE, in the Babylonian exile, Jews began using a form of the Assyrian script, which was another offshoot of the same family of scripts. During the 3rd century BCE, Jews began to use a stylized, square form of the Aramaic alphabet that was used by the Persian Empire, while the Samaritans continued to use a form of the paleo-Hebrew script, called the Samaritan script. After the fall of the Persian Empire, Jews used both scripts before settling on the Assyrian form. For a limited time thereafter, the use of the paleo-Hebrew script among Jews was retained only to write the tetragrammaton, but soon that custom was also abandoned. The square Hebrew alphabet was later adapted and used for writing languages of the Jewish diaspora in Euro such as Karaim, Judeo-Arabic, Ladino, Yiddish, etc. The Hebrew alphabet continued in use for scholarly writing in Hebrew and came again into everyday use with the rebirth of the Hebrew language as a spoken language in the 18th and 19th centuries, especially in Israel. Description: General. In the traditional form, the Hebrew alphabet is an abjad consisting only of consonants, written from right to left. It has 22 letters, 5 of which use different forms at the end of a word. Vowels. In the traditional form, vowels are indicated by the weak consonants aleph, he, vav, or odd serving as vowel letters, or matres lectionis. The letter is combined with a previous vowel and becomes silent, or by imitation of such cases in the spelling of other forms. Also, a system of vowel points to indicate vowels, called niqqud, was developed. In modern forms of the alphabet, as in the case of Yiddish and to some extent modern Israeli Hebrew, vowels may be indicated. Today, the trend is toward full spelling with the weak letters acting as true vowels. When used to write Yiddish, vowels are indicated, using certain letters either with or without niqqud diacritics, except for Hebrew words, which in Yiddish are written in their Hebrew spelling. To preserve the proper vowel sounds, scholars developed several different sets of vocalization and diacritical symbols called niqqud. One of these, the Tiberian system, eventually prevailed. Aaron ben Moses ben Asher, and his family for several generations, are credited for refining and maintaining the system. These points are normally used only for special purposes, such as biblical books intended for study, in poetry or when teaching the language to children. The Tiberian system also includes a set of cantillation marks used to indicate how scriptural passages should be chanted, used in synagogue recitations of scripture, called trope. In everyday writing of modern Hebrew, niqqud are absent. However, patterns of how words are derived from Hebrew roots allow Hebrew speakers to determine the vowel structure of a given word from its consonants based on the word's context and part of speech. Alphabet. Neither the Old Hebrew script nor the modern Hebrew script have case, but 5 letters have special final forms, called soffit form, used only at the end of a word, somewhat as in the Greek or in the Arabic and Mandaic alphabets. These are shown below the normal form, in the following table. Hebrew is read and written from right to left. Note: the chart reads from left to right. Pronunciation of letter names. Stylistic variants. The following table displays typographic and chirographic variants of each letter. For the 5 letters that have a different final form used at the end of words, the final forms are displayed beneath the regular form. The 3 lettering variants currently in use are block, cursive and Rashi. Block and Rashi are used in books. Block lettering dominates, with Rashi lettering typically used for certain editorial inserts or biblical commentaries in various standard literary works. Cursive is used almost exclusively when handwriting, unless block lettering is desired for stylistic purposes. Yiddish symbols, numeric values of letters. Hebrew letters are used to denote numbers, nowadays used only in specific contexts, for example denoting dates in the Hebrew calendar, denoting grades of school in Israel, other listings, commonly in Kabbalah in a practice known as gematria, and often in religious contexts. The numbers 500, 600, 700, 800 and 900 are commonly represented by the juxtapositions gigahertz, K, and gigahertz respectively. Adding a geresh to a letter multiplies its value by 1000, for example, the year 5769 is portrayed as cubed K section, where represents 5000, and K section represents 769. Transliterations and transcriptions. The following table lists transliterations and transcriptions of Hebrew letters used in modern Hebrew. Clarifications: for some letters, the Academy of the Hebrew Language offers a precise transliteration that differs from the regular standard it has set. When omitted, no such precise alternative exists and the regular standard applies. The IPA phonemic transcription is specified whenever it uses a different symbol from the one used for the regular standard Israeli transliteration. The IPA phonetic transcription is specified whenever it differs from IPA phonemic transcription. Note: SBL's transliteration system, recommended in its Handbook of Style, differs slightly from the 2006 precise transliteration system of the Academy of the Hebrew Language. For SBL uses at the first pound, and for with no gesh, SBL uses the same symbols as for with gesh. Notes: A1234 in transliterations of modern Israeli Hebrew, initial and final sent, silent or initial, and silent are not transliterated. To the eye of readers orientating themselves on Latin alphabets, these letters might seem to be transliterated as vowel letters. However, these are in fact transliterations of the vowel diacritics niqqud. For example, in O, Omicron and O to the first, the letter always represents the same consonant, E, whereas the vowels, and respectively represent the spoken vowel, whether it is orthographically denoted by diacritics or not. Since the Academy of the Hebrew Language ascertains that an initial position is not transliterated, the symbol for the glottal stop AE3/4 is omitted from the transliteration, and only the subsequent vowels are transliterated, resulting in im, and respectively. B123 The diacritic geresh cubed is used with some other letters as well, but only to transliterate from other languages to Hebrew never to spell Hebrew words. Therefore they were not included in this table. The non-standard cubed, and are sometimes used to represent, which like, and appears in Hebrew slang and loan words. C12 The sound is often transcribed ch, inconsistently with the guidelines specified by the Academy of the Hebrew Language, acham. Section sheskach. D. Although the Bible does include a single occurrence of a final pay with a gesh, in modern Hebrew is always represented by pay in its regular, not final, form currency, even when in final word position, which occurs with loan words, foreign names and some slang. Pronunciation. The descriptions that follow are based on the pronunciation of modern Standard Israeli Hebrew. Shin and Sin. Shin and Sin are represented by the same letter, copyright, but are two separate phonemes. They are not mutually allophonic. When vowel diacritics are used, the two phonemes are differentiated with a shin dot or sin dot. The shin dot is above the upper right side of the letter, and the sin dot is above the upper left side of the letter. Historically, left dot sin corresponds to Proto-Semitic angstrom, which in Biblical Judaic Hebrew corresponded to a voiceless alveolar lateral fricative, as is evident in Greek transliteration of Hebrew words such as balsam, as is evident in the Targum Onkelos. Rendering of Proto-Semitic angstrom as, is still evident in the Sukhothri language. Jesh. Historically, the consonants beth, gimel, daleth, kaf, currency pay and tav each had two sounds, one hard, and one soft, depending on the position of the letter and other factors. When vowel diacritics are used, the hard sounds are indicated by a central dot called jesh, while the soft sounds lacked jesh. In modern Hebrew, however, the jesh only changes the pronunciation of beth, kaf, and currency pay, and doesn't affect the name of the letter. The differences are as follows. In other dialects there are variations from this pattern. In some Sephardi and Mizrahi dialects, bet without jesh is pronounced, b, like bet with jesh. In Syrian and Yemenite Hebrew, gimel without jesh is pronounced, e pound. In Yemenite Hebrew, and in the Iraqi pronunciation of the word Adonai, dalet without jesh is pronounced, a degree as in these. In Ashkenazi Hebrew, tav without jesh is pronounced, s, as in silk. In Iraqi and Yemenite Hebrew, and formerly in some other dialects, tav without jesh is pronounced, I, is in thick, identical pronunciation. In Israel's general population, many consonants have the same pronunciation. They are as follows, varyingly, Ancient Hebrew pronunciation. Some of the variations in sound mentioned above are due to a systematic feature of Ancient Hebrew. The 6 consonants /bedkpt/ were pronounced differently depending on their position. These letters were also called begd-kfat letters. The full details are very complex. This summary omits some points. They were pronounced as plosive /bedkpt/ at the beginning of a syllable, or when doubled. They were pronounced as fricative /ve pound a degree x Fahrenheit I/ when preceded by a vowel. The plosive and double pronunciations were indicated by the jesh. In modern Hebrew the sounds a and a have reverted to d and e, respectively, and r to the first has become t, so only the remaining 3 consonants /bkp/ show variation. Resh may have also been a doubled letter, making the list begd pori s. Chet and Sentayan represented pharyngeal fricatives, Tsadi represented the emphatic consonant, Tet represented the emphatic consonant, and Section Kof represented the uvular plosive. All these are common Semitic consonants. K-sin was originally different from both K-shin and Samek, but had become the same as Samek by the time the vowel pointing was devised. Because of cognates with other Semitic languages, this phoneme is known to have originally been a lateral consonant, most likely the voiceless alveolar lateral fricative or the voiceless alveolar lateral affricate. Vowels, matres lectionis. Elf, he, bav and unregistered trademark yod are letters that can sometimes indicate a vowel instead of a consonant. When they do, and unregistered trademark are considered to constitute part of the vowel designation in combination with the niqqud symbol a vowel diacritic, whereas and are considered to be mute, their role being purely indicative of the non-marked vowel. Vowel points, niqqud is the system of dots that help determine vowels and consonants. In Hebrew, all forms of niqqud are often omitted in writing, except for children's books, prayer books, poetry, foreign words, and words which would be ambiguous to pronounce. Israeli Hebrew has 5 vowel phonemes, /eaou/, but many more written symbols for them. Note 1, the symbol represents whatever Hebrew letter is used. Note 2, the pronunciation of zera and sometimes segala euro with or without the letter yod. Euro is sometimes early in modern Hebrew. This is not correct in the normative pronunciation and not consistent in the spoken language. Note 3, the djesh, mapik, and shirak have different functions, even though they look the same. Note 4, the letter is used since it can only be represented by that letter. Meteg. By adding a vertical line underneath the letter and to the left of the vowel point, the vowel is made long. The meteg is only used in Biblical Hebrew, not modern Hebrew. Shiva. By adding 2 vertical dots underneath the letter, the vowel is made very short. Comparison table, Jashem. The symbol is called a jashem and is a punctuation mark used in the Hebrew language to denote acronyms. It is written before the last letter in the acronym. Jashem is also the name of a note of cantillation in the reading of the Torah, printed above the accented letter. Sounds represented with diacritic Jeresh. The sounds, T angstrom florin, D angstrom, E, written cubed, 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 and W, non-standardly sometimes transliterated or cubed, are often found in slang and loan words that are part of the everyday Hebrew colloquial vocabulary. The apostrophe-looking symbol after the Hebrew letter modifies the pronunciation of the letter and is called a Jeresh. The pronunciation of the following letters can also be modified with the Jeresh diacritic. The represented sounds are however foreign to Hebrew phonology, that is, these symbols only represent sounds in foreign words or names when transliterated with the Hebrew alphabet, and never loan words. A Jeresh is also used to denote acronyms pronounced as a string of letters, and to denote a Hebrew numeral. Jeresh also is the name of one of the notes of cantillation in the reading of the Torah, but its appearance and function is different. Religious use. The letters of the Hebrew alphabet have played varied roles in Jewish religious literature over the centuries, primarily in mystical texts. Some sources in classical rabbinical literature seem to acknowledge the historical provenance of the currently used Hebrew alphabet and deal with them as a mundane subject. Others attribute mystical significance to the letters, connecting them with the process of creation or the redemption. In mystical conceptions, the alphabet is considered eternal, pre-existent to the earth, and the letters themselves are seen as having holiness and power, sometimes to such an extent that several stories from the Talmud illustrate the idea that they cannot be destroyed. The idea of the letter's creative power finds its greatest vehicle in the Sefer Yetzirah, or Book of Creation, a mystical text of uncertain origin which describes a story of creation highly divergent from that in the Book of Genesis, largely through exposition on the powers of the letters of the alphabet. The supposed creative powers of the letters are also referenced in the Talmud and Zohar. Another book, the 13th-century Kabbalistic text Sefer HaTimuna, holds that a single letter of unknown pronunciation, held by some to be the four-pronged shin on one side of the tefillin box, is missing from the current alphabet. The world's flaws, the book teaches, are related to the absence of this letter, the eventual revelation of which will repair the universe. Another example of messianic significance attached to the letters is the teaching of Rabbi Eliezer that the 5 letters of the alphabet with final forms hold the secret of redemption. In addition, the letters occasionally feature in Agadic portions of non-mystical rabbinic literature. In such regard the letters are often given anthropomorphic qualities and depicted as speaking to God. Commonly their shapes are used in parables to illustrate points of ethics or theology. An example from the Babylonian Talmud. Extensive instructions about the proper methods of forming the letters are found in Mishnot Sifrim, within Mishnah Berurah of Yisrael Mukagan. Mathematical use. In set theory letter Aleph is used to mark infinite cardinality of a set, for example number of all natural numbers is. Similarly Beth is used for infinite ordinals. See Aleph number and Beth number. Unicode and HTML. The Unicode Hebrew block extends from U+0590 to U+05FF and from U+FB1D to U+FB4F. It includes letters, ligatures, combining diacritical marks and punctuation. The numeric character references is included for HTML. These can be used in many markup languages, and they are often used in Wiki to create the Hebrew glyphs compatible with the majority of web browsers. See also, Biblical Hebrew orthography, Jersheim, Hebrew Braille, Hebrew diacritics, Hebrew keyboard, Hebrew punctuation, help, Hebrew, history of the Hebrew language, inverted nun, Kiran type, Rashi script, Romanization of Hebrew, significance of numbers of Judaism, Syriac alphabet, notes, alefbet is commonly written in Israeli Hebrew without the make, A unregistered trademark K unregistered trademark, as opposed to with the hyphen, AV 3/4 unregistered trademark K unregistered trademark. B. The Arabic letters generally have 4 forms, according to their place in the word. The same goes with the Mandaic ones, except for 3 of the 22 letters, which have only 1 form. C. In forms of Hebrew older than modern Hebrew, pound, unregistered trademark and can only be read B, K and P, respectively, at the beginning of a word, while they will have the sole value of V, KH and F in a soffit position, with few exceptions. In medial positions, both pronunciations are possible. In modern Hebrew this restriction is not absolute, for example, unregistered trademark O unregistered trademark megahertz unregistered trademark and never, degree O to the first O 1/4 and never. Abjad may be inserted to unambiguously denote the plosive variant, O 1/4 equals, O 1/4 equals, 1/4 equals. Similarly Rafa copyright placed above the letter unambiguously denotes the fricative variant, O equals and equals. In modern Hebrew orthography, the sound, P, at the end of a word is denoted by the regular form currency, as opposed to the final form pound, which always denotes, F. D however, used in KTIV male, is to be distinguished from the Yiddish ligature degree. E1 E2 E3 E4 E5 The Academy of the Hebrew Language states that both, V, and, W, be indistinguishably represented in Hebrew using the letter vav. Sometimes the vav is indeed doubled, however not to denote, W, as opposed to, V, but rather, when spelling without niqqud, to denote the phoneme at a non-initial and non-final position in the word, whereas a single vav at a non-initial and non-final position in the word in spelling without niqqud denotes one of the phonemes or. To pronounce foreign words and loan words containing the sound, W, Hebrew readers must therefore rely on former knowledge and context. References. Bibliography, A Gesenius Hebrew Grammar, AA Section 5 FF. Hoffman, Joel M. 2004. In the Beginning, A Short History of the Hebrew Language. New York, New York University Press. Sorens Badillos, Angel. 1993. A History of the Hebrew Language. Cambridge, England, Cambridge University Press. Steinberg, David. History of the Hebrew Language. Mather's Table, Hebrew Alphabet Guide, External Links, General, The Hebrew Alphabet, Meanings, and Spiritual Symbolism, How to Draw Letters, Official Unicode Standards Document for Hebrew, Transliterate Your English Name into Hebrew Letters, Hebrew Alphabet Charts, Interactive Hebrew Alphabet Lesson, Mobile OCR Hebrew Dictionary, Keyboards, Lighttype.com A Euro Virtual and Interactive Hebrew Keyboard, Hebrew Calligraphy Alphabet Model Hebrew Calligraphy Alphabet, Mackledit.com A Euro for typing Hebrew with an English keyboard, Hebrew Writing A Euro Typing Hebrew and niqqud using extended English keyboard, Prize Find, Oldest Hebrew Inscription Biblical Archaeology Review.